Hello and welcome to football here with Shane Stapleton, myself and Steven Poacher joins me. If you want to get this Down jersey, I'm sure there's a few people from Down watching to see what Steven has to say. Go to OurGame.com, use the promo code OurGame, you get 15% off. Just we had some roller coaster weekend of football there, didn't we? I mean, Cork started off well against Kerry, 1-5-3 up, got annihilated, lost the rest of the game. What was it? 4-19 to 4 points. Galway were all over, and you obviously know Galway. You played against them in the league. Galway and the championship, obviously. Galway started well against Mayo. They were leading at half-time and got blitzed in the second half, scoring just 3 points from play. So, God, how do you sum up that weekend?
Both games, probably, Shane, were very similar in the way you described them. And I suppose, Galway went in slightly as underdogs. Cork probably more so, bigger underdogs. And I suppose there was periods in the first half in both games that both teams were on top and they had chances. And probably didn't take those chances. And I think, it's a bit like if you go back to Park of Queeve last October, November, whatever the game was, everything went for Cork. They took every single chance. Kerry had a bit of an off day. Seanie O'Shea missed free kicks you'd never see him miss. Clifford missed free kicks you'd never see him miss. And I think looking at Kerry Cork get into the game, I really could only see one winner because Kerry just seemed to have some bit between their teeth this year, and I think last year Shane has extremely hurt them, really, really hurt them. And I would say, unquestionably that there was a really, really deep desire there to put the foot in the throat on Sunday past, and you could see in the second half there was absolutely no letting up whatsoever. And the one thing, Shane, and I think I tweeted about it after the match, the one thing that stood out for me in both teams was the level of physical conditioning in Mayo and the level of physical conditioning in Kerry. It's scary. It's scary that the pace and the intensity and the running power of them so late in the game, in both teams, and listen, there was big question marks about Mayo, where would the scores come from without Killian O'Connor and stuff like that. But look, this is a Mayo team with Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue, who have obviously played in an All-Ireland Under-21 final only a handful of years ago, and they've come through. And even noticing there's a noticeable difference in Oisin Mullen, Ryan O'Donoghue, Oisin McLaughlin, some of these younger lads, there's a noticeable difference even in their conditioning. You can actually see them getting stronger, bigger. And, to compete against the 6 in a row Kingpins Dublin, that's what stands them apart from everyone. Everyone talks about their work rate and their organisation and their system and, and their structures and everything. But the level of physical conditioning that they all have as well. We were chatting about it a few weeks ago. Myself and big Daniel St. Ledger were out playing a bit of golf, and Daniel retired from inter-county football this year. And we're just talking about the Dublin team in general. And he was sort of saying to me, he made a great point. He says the majority of those lads, if you actually look at the Olympics now, the majority of them are probably that sort of 800-meter type runner build. They're not man mountains, they're not skip, but they're just that perfect shape, body shape, to have that athleticism, to be able to continually make those hard runs. So you can see that the teams that are contesting now the latter stages are the teams that realize that this physical conditioning is so important, so important.
Does it follow the lines of AFL runners? I remember watching Conor Nash when he came back from, he'd been training with whatever team he's with in the AFL, I can't remember off the top of my head, and he came back to play for, was it Simonstown? I was watching the Meath semi-final, I think this is maybe 3 years ago, and I remember just thinking, lean as a butcher's dog, like not carrying any excess weight. Like you think back to when Kieran McGeeney's Kildare team were just huge tanks, and I think Cork annihilated them in Croke Park around 2011, and everyone said, well, they're probably gone too far down the road of being gym bunnies, so they are carrying all this extra muscle and they can't turn anymore. So what is the modern GAA player? Like I look at Limerick as well, and I see the same thing as well. They're all lean as butcher's dogs. So is that where all teams will be going?
Well, I suppose to put it in simplistic terms, I'm not a strength conditioning coach, and it's a field that I'm not an expert in from it. But I suppose the best way to describe it, Shane, is having long and lean muscles, and having long and lean where you have the capacity to obviously, make those continual runs. The way the game has gone now, Shane, and the way teams are playing now, the game has become so athletic that it's a bit like, I know we'll talk about Tyrone in a second, but I know Sean Cavanagh made the point a few weeks ago, look, Tyrone have picked 4 defenders in their forward line. But what in fact Tyrone had done was they picked 4 really good ball carriers in their forward line. Kieran McGeary, Peter Hart, Niall Sludden, Myler. Like, Myler was one of the best underage footballers in the country a few years ago when he won a Sigerson Cup medal with St Mary's. His running power coming from deep, and that, if you look at even McKenna, for example, and you mentioned Aussie Rules, referenced Aussie Rules, he came on against Donegal, and Tyrone have been playing him in a full forward role. And he came on against Donegal in the semi-final, and the first ball he intercepted McBurney on his own 14 and took off. And the athleticism to be able to do that, in the heat temperature. Yeah. So it is a huge part of the game, Shane. And I suppose the days of getting in and bench pressing as much as you can, and the beach body is, as a lot of footballers probably would have had in the past, is probably gone. And I think from chatting to Peter Donnelly a number of years ago, I remember something struck a chord. I mean, we were looking at a strength conditioning coach actually with the club at the time, and we were going to invest some money in it. So we obviously wanted to get the right person, and we chatted to 3 or 4 individuals, and I just rang Pete and asked him for a bit of advice on it, and he talked about this. It's not about muscle anymore. It's about movement over muscle. But it's about movement within the muscle, and trying to incorporate and trying to replicate nearly movements in the game. So maybe a player might be wearing a weighted sleigh, drive on the ball, lift it, hand pass it off, and things like that. And just more the game-specific movements and conditioned in that particular manner,
Yeah, that's true. I mean, some of the strength and conditioning that we would have done at club level in the last few years would involve a lot of weights where it's push stuff. So if you go into a tackle and you want to push away from someone, that is the reason you do it. So it's all very, like, you don't go to the gym to get big. You do this work so that you have ways to apply it out on the field. Same as doing a drill. Like, if you want to be able to hit a cross-field pass in for your full forward to go and collect and turn and score on the arc, I mean, that's the sort of stuff you practice in training. So it kind of stands to reason. We wanted to look at the Kerry press. I mean, I watched them the other day, and I was seeing the way they set up for the Cork kickouts. At times they had 5 people in front of the goalkeeper spanning out across the front of the goal. Like, is that the sort of thing that's sustainable against a Rory Began who can kick over the top? Or do you think they just thought, look, Cork, it's going to work against them?
Well, last year in the National League against Monaghan, I remember the game. It was in Enniskeen, I think, and they didn't press Began's kick out as much. They dropped off quite a bit of his kickouts. But I think that they can pick and choose, Shane. Now, they went after Bernard Power in the first league game against Galway. They went after his kick out, something serious, and he probably ended up losing his place after that to Gleeson, So they really went hard after him in that first league game. They really went hard after Morgan in Tralee, which was an interesting one, and they had great joy in the first half, which is not like, a keeper of that caliber but I actually remember speaking to Niall about this. We played a game of golf last year, and I was asking him about the Dublin press, and he was saying, like, as a goalkeeper, it's hugely intimidating when you look up and see every pocket of the pitch occupied by a blue jersey. It's very difficult, from a visual perspective, and that's something that Kerry have done. The likes of Gavin White and Paul Murphy and Jack Barry, Tom O'Sullivan, Jason Foley, these guys have all pushed up the field. Shawnee O'Shea slips inside and makes a 4 across the inside line, so there's no short out ball at all. They're protecting either side of the D for the disguise one, dinked. So they've literally pressed right up, nearly like a 4-4-5 or sometimes a 5-4-4 or 4-5-4, whatever it happens to be. But it's a risk and reward one, Shane, in the fact that they're taking the high risk, as in they're pushing up. The opposition may leave 2 forwards up or 3 forwards up, but it has massive rewards too. And what it can do, Shane, even psychologically, it can seriously damage a goalkeeper. If a goalkeeper gives 2 or 3 away, confidence can go, pressure can come on. We have a crowd back in the stadium now. All of a sudden you can get anxious, you can get edgy. You're only human, goalkeepers are like anyone, they're only human, and there's an awful mammoth amount of pressure on goalkeepers now. But going back to your question, and it's an interesting one, will they do it against Dublin? Well, I am going to flip that on its head, and I'm going to say, would they do that against a Cluxton Dublin, or would they do that against a Comerford Dublin?
Yeah.
And this is the interesting one. And I think they'll look at Comerford, who is a brilliant goalkeeper, an absolutely brilliant goalkeeper, and who can pick a kick out equally as well as any of the top goalkeepers, but has maybe Kerry are thinking doesn't maybe have the experience and the sort of the what you would probably call even the arrogance of Cluxton, just to say, if I make a mistake, doesn't faze me, I'm going to go again. And I think back to the All-Ireland final, Shane, last year between Dublin and Mayo, when Cluxton kicks the first 2 away, a lot of teams and a lot of goalkeepers might have just went into a mini meltdown. It didn't phase him. Next kick out, he made sure that that was on the hands of a Dublin player, you know. So Dublin are going to miss that experience. And we're talking about Dublin, and obviously we have to look at the Leinster final. They're not through yet. They still have to play Kildare. But I would say Kerry are thinking of the bigger picture. They're thinking further down the line. And I would say what you'll find, Shane, is that teams will pick and choose their moments to do that.
Yeah, and remember a couple of years ago, I think it was against Donegal. I could have the team wrong, but Rory Beggan hit a long kick out. It was Ulster Championship anyway, and it bounced inside the far 45, I think, or certainly inside the far 65. He completely kicked over the press and allowed Monaghan straight in for possibly even a goal scoring opportunity. I just can't remember it off the top of my head, but just thinking about it now as we're talking, do you think at Croke Park, where the Ulster final is going to be this weekend, that the likes of Beggan or Morgan could actually kick the whole way over a press? And obviously with Morgan, it's interesting. He often seems to come out to the D when the opposition is taking a kick out, just in case, or maybe to occupy space, or if somehow the ball breaks to him, he's there, or even just to be in the attacker's head to let him know there's someone else here that you have to worry about. So, you know, trying to go along at Croke Park, can it be done the same way as it would in Clones, for example?
No, I think it can. It obviously can, you know, and I think if you look at the Dublin goal, I think it was 2018 where they got the goal against Kerry. Kerry went full out in the press again. Fluxton picks out Brian Howard. They sort of had a wee mini overload on the sideline. Picked out Brian Howard. McCaffrey took off, and they were through 3v1 at that stage. So it can be done in Croker, Shane. You know, just on the Morgan thing, it's interesting because he does come out on the opposition's kick out and fills pockets of space, but he against Donegal, he actually done it on the halfway line. You know, he actually was on one side, and I can't remember who was on the other side, but it was because of the spur man that they actually utilised that and really went aggressive on the press. But I think, Shane, the biggest thing about the press is if the ball is going to your side, there has to be a commitment to the press. You know, there has to be a really, really aggressive commitment. You can't have three going and one dropping off. Now, one thing I've been interested with Kerry was, in one of the observations that I picked up, was they're so quick on the other side of the press that if the ball's in mid-air going to the right-hand side, the guys on the left-hand side are sprinting straight back to get the cover on, you know. So the big question, Shane, and this is the big thing that you talked about there, Croke Park. Croke Park's an energy-sapping pitch, as we all know. Can that be done for 70 minutes religiously? No, probably not. So it is probably about picking your moments. And when you do pick your moments, you have to capitalise on them. But I've actually jotted that just in my notes before I was chatting to you. Like, I think on Sunday, the keepers are going to play a mammoth role in this game. And I just don't think from kickouts. I think from place balls, scoring opportunities, it's going to be, you know, another warm day probably. It gives the people probably don't realise as well, when you call a keeper up, it gives you that 90 seconds just to get a breather, let your team settle, you know, take a little bit of a break as well. There's a psychological element to bringing a goalkeeper up, and there's a game management element to it as well. So I think the two keepers are going to play a big role, but I think they're also going to play a big role in open play. Rory Beggan was a big part of the panic that happened in the marshes down in Newry here last week when he came out as the spur man towards the end when Monaghan were chasing the game. Do you pick him up? Do you leave him free? Them two boys can ping a score from 30, 40 yards. You know, so it's a very, very interesting one. Will they go with that on Sunday? Will both teams utilise those two keepers as sweeper keepers? I think they will. And I know both of them, you know, can play out the field. Like, Niall Morgan's a very, very good footballer for his club. Plays midfield for his club. Plays 15 sometimes. Comes out as a third midfielder. His club was beat by a point in a senior championship semi-final with him playing out the field. So he's a competent footballer. So it'll be interesting to see what role those two guys take up on Sunday from that capacity.
Did you notice how Mayo stood off Conor Gleeson, the Galway goalkeeper, and allowed him to carry the ball out as far as they liked, and just marked everyone really tightly? And once or twice he just bombed the ball down the field. Whereas the likes of Morgan, he'd probably stay going as long as you like. As long as you open up the lanes for him, he'll stay going, and maybe Beggan will too. And then just another point to add into that, the fact that Mayo and the likes of Oisín Mullin, who you've mentioned already, like, you can give him a short kick out and you'd feel 90% confident that he's going to turn and beat a man. Whereas other teams, they probably don't have that luxury. And, you know, if they try to run it out from the back, they get turned over very easily.
Shane, there's a lot of teams that are actually adopting nearly a false press now, where they're putting on a mini press, but they're actually hoping that a certain player may get the ball. You know, you heard when Derry were playing Donegal, you could hear it very clearly on the audio, where Rory Gallagher was roaring, let him have it, and he obviously identified certain players in the Donegal team who he was comfortable letting them have the ball, because certain players, everyone's different, everyone's got different attributes. Some players' attributes are defensively tagging a man, other players' attributes are their line breaking, their aggressive running, some players' attributes are their kicking skills. So you need to be careful what players you give those opportunities to and what players you give the ball to. But a lot of teams now would try and nearly even sometimes put on a false press where you're pushing up, but discreetly you're letting the goalkeeper have an option, and then you're obviously trying to channel that player into a certain area. Dublin are very good at that channeling, where they channel you towards the sideline and block you in, and then you've no out ball, and the player coming back out is either pushed over the sideline, and the sideline is nearly used as the extra defender, and it takes a lot of coaching, a lot of work, and a lot of discipline, but it can be very effective, Shane, when it's utilised.
Yeah, we talk a lot about Cillian O'Connor and the fact that he's out for the season. Are you seeing enough from the other Mayo players that are in the attack that they can overcome that? Darren McHale played in full forward. Ryan O'Donoghue took over the free-taking duties, knocked in the penalty also. Kevin McLaughlin came in, I thought was instrumental. Most people seem to think that. Do you think that they can overcome the loss of O'Connor?
Well, even on that, Shane, as well, I know he's gone a year or two now as well, but even the loss of Andy Moran as well, who was a linchpin for them as well at full forward and stuff. But look, they have a couple of young lads up front. Obviously, Tommy Conroy, Ryan O'Donoghue are fine individuals, fine footballers. Cillian O'Connor's, he's obviously one of the best inside forwards that has played in the last decade. His stats and his scoring ratios up there with the best in the business. But it's an interesting one. Matty Ryan chipped in with a couple of scores the other day as well. Aidan O'Shea in the second half was a bit more effective when he went to full forward. That's something that they may tend to go with, maybe, and give the likes of Ryan O'Donoghue and Tommy Conroy that sort of physicality and that presence in and around them as well, where they can go a bit more direct and a bit more route one. But look, it's been proven so far that they haven't missed him, but they're getting to the stage now where I think the winners of Connacht are playing the winners of Leinster. Is that correct? So they're playing the winners of Dublin or Kildare.
No, Dublin Kildare will be playing Mayo.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Leinster. Yeah. So Connacht. So the winners are obviously playing they're playing the winners, of Dublin and Kildare, and you're sort of looking, saying, right, well, if Dublin come through that, which everyone expects them to come through that, the questions then you have are, well, Dublin have lost a lot of key defensive personnel as well over the last number of years, so it remains to be seen, Shane. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. I'm going to leave it open ended. It probably remains to be seen that. Have they done enough, or have they, they beat Leitrim, they beat Sligo, they get over the line against Galway in the second half, but a lot of Mayo scores in the second half, if you had to watch the game, actually came from really, really good, strong running play, and opening up those driving lanes and running at Galway. So, yeah, I think it just remains to be seen whether they are going to, have enough to beat Dublin. But look, this is a Dublin team, Shane, that and I just looked at it today, and I think this team were probably at their peak. That this particular group of players in around about 2017, 2018, they're playing some of the best football they've ever played. And, you've lost Cluxton, McCaffrey, Cian O'Sullivan, Petty Andrews, Mannion, the subs that came on that day in the final against Mayo, Flynn, McManaman, Brogan, Damard Connolly. Jesus, that is some calibre of player. And I know we all had a little bit of a laugh and a little joke when some of the Dublin pundits come in and say this is a golden generation, but it is a golden generation. That was a golden generation of player. You're looking at their minors this year who were beaten well by Meath. Their under-20s were beaten by Offaly. All of a sudden, it gives teams a glimmer of hope to think, maybe the gap is they're coming back to the pack a little bit, and that will give Kildare obviously confidence getting in on Sunday as well, and they've obviously become a bit more steely defensively. So Sunday will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if the same sort of, cracks and fragile things that we've seen in the Wexford game and the Meath game are there. But again, there could be a Kerry type reaction where they might be hurting from the fact that people are now questioning, have they lost their aura, have they lost their spark? And there could be a foot in the throat job on Sunday just as easily,
But is it a foot in the throat job from Kerry, or is that Cork just when Kerry actually got it together after a sloppy opening few minutes, and once they got the couple of scores and got the bit of confidence up, that Cork just melted psychologically. And I mean, the goalkeeper kept going long. I know he went off injured, but Martin, there was a few times when there were short options on, and I think he just kicked into the 50-50 anyway, and nobody went down with a Maria injury or whatever to try and slow up the play. Like, did Cork fold in that game?
Well, look, I'm not sort of in a position to
Oh yeah,
see
well look,
what...
I'm not trying to tee you up for that, but it was to me is they kind of folded a little.
I haven't seen enough of Cork this year to really...
Yeah.
But what I know from league form is Kerry were league winners in Division 1, joint winners with Dublin, and Cork stayed up on the last day of the season by a point against Westmeath. So you're sort of looking at a team that were at the bottom of Division 2 and a team that were at the top of Division 1. And, we're looking at some of the performances, Shane, that have happened, like Donegal's win against Down, a team that Down were on a similar trajectory that Cork were on. And, Donegal have obviously, gone out and won that game by 15, 16, 17 points. But I just feel that Kerry just have so much quality, Shane. I think that they're, themselves and Dublin over the last number of years, have been, just ahead of everyone else, and obviously you could throw Mayo in there as well. And then you have, your Tyrones and stuff that are scrapping for that sort of second phase type of teams in Division 1. But look, I really, really feel that Kerry just have so much quality. It was in Killarney. There's without a question, Shane, they had the bit between the teeth, without the question. And I know from speaking to a couple of Kerry people that they were really, really, from last November when they were beaten in Park Equive, they have been saying that, we need another go at this team. We need another rattle at this team. And Kerry are proud people. They've got great tradition, great history. They've got some phenomenal footballers. And I suppose from a Cork perspective, like, and ironically looking in, like if you'd have said before the game that David Clifford would be kept more or less completely quiet, and hardly touch the ball, you have a chance. But it just goes to show you the quality that they have coming from everywhere. And I think there's players in that Kerry team, Shane, that are so underrated outside of Kerry. Like, obviously within Kerry they probably do rate them, but the likes of Stephen O'Brien and Paul Murphy, and like, these lads are super ball carriers, like phenomenal footballers. Sometimes the spotlight tends to be on the David Cliffords, the Morans, the Shawnee O'Shea's, but these guys are unbelievable. Tom O'Sullivan would probably win a medal at the Olympics there for cross-country running or marathon running or something, but he never stops. He corner forward's nightmare.
But Cork really did. They seem to target perceived weaknesses from their end. Like they tried to get ball in early to Brian Hurley, and he did a bit of damage on Jason Foley early on, and then Brian O'Biogli was moved onto him. And also, I don't know if you noticed that Luke Connolly a few times tried some banana kicks into the area. They were looking to get the ball in high and early, something that Dublin got a bit of joy from in the league also. Is there a concern that might catch them out down the line?
Well, I think Kerry people would tell you that they have a concern over their defence. That they're trying to outshoot teams, outscore teams. Aidan O'Rourke had a great piece in the RT a few weeks ago. I think he wrote a good article about the teams in the last four. They're all very, very, the perceived teams, the Mayos, the Kerrys, Dublins, whoever comes out of Tyrone and Monaghan, there's a perception that they're all very offensively minded, and offensively gaining that if you score 20, we'll score 21. But deep down behind it all, Dublin still have that systematic system. They're still very much, the process is still very there, Shane. And, sometimes when they're that open, I think Kerry conceded 4 goals against them in the National League. I think it was 4-9 or 4-10 or 4-11 or something like that.
No, you're right. It was, yeah.
Conceding goals could be a big factor for them, particularly. And listen, I'll be honest with you, whoever comes out of Sunday's or Saturday's Ulster final between Tyrone and Monaghan, particularly Tyrone, if Tyrone come through it, like Tyrone will be hurting from their league performance in Killarney. They'll be really, really seething from it. And Tyrone have against Donegal became a lot more sort of streetwise defensively. They got a lot of numbers behind the ball. They played Donegal in the counter attack, albeit Murphy sending off set the game up perfectly for them. But they did go back into that revert to type system that Hart had in. It's ingrained in a lot of the Tyrone players, because Tyrone have got some phenomenal ball carriers. They've got some great athletes. They've got a lot of pace in their team, and they've got a strong bench as well. So Tyrone will not phase out. They'll not phase out of games. Athletically, they'll be well conditioned. So if it is Tyrone that comes through, Tyrone will give Kerry a good game, a really good game.
So when you were watching Mayo against Galway the other day, and Galway went 2-5 to 6 points ahead. They looked like they were in a right spot coming into half time, but then they missed their first 5 chances in a row after the break. And Mayo obviously got that penalty which Ryan O'Donoghue converted, and they didn't score at all from the 37th minute when Matthew Tierney knocked over a score. They didn't score again until the 61st minute. Got a couple of frees in the second half, 3 frees in the second half for Matthew Tierney. What do you think happened there? And also there was, at a crucial moment, that ball that I think it was Shane Walsh dropped short, and Damien Comer almost punched in. It came down and the Reds get it away and go and score up at the other end. Like, do you think Galway were somewhat unfortunate in that game, or is it just this is Mayo and the level of athleticism, they're going to wear teams down?
Yeah, I think as well, probably went a wee bit unnoticed that just before half time, Shane Walsh picked up a really, really bad injury. He was absolutely flying in the first half. I think there was a bit of a tussle off the ball, and I think he landed on his shoulder because he did come off in the game, holding the shoulder, and he was a huge loss, Shane, because obviously he wasn't physically right in the second half, with the injury, and I think Padraig Joyce might have come out at the end of it and said that. So that was obviously a big factor. Struggled around the middle as well. Obviously Mayo, got on top on the kickouts, and kickouts give you the platform, obviously, Shane, to build from, and not having that was a huge aspect. But you hit the nail on the head. When you come out after half time and you've got that lead, you don't need to chase anything. You just need to keep the scoreboard working. I know it's an old cliche, like, and an old manager of mine saying, just keep the scoreboard ticking over. If you get one, it takes 2 to beat it, and sometimes you just need that score early just to settle yourself. And I think once Mayo got that run on them, and once they got that charge on them, but look, Shane, hats off to Mayo too tactically, because Paul Conroy and Shane Walsh are obviously Galway's 2 key players. And at half time, it obviously would have been red flagged, or it would have been flagged that these 2 guys are having a serious impact on the game. Conroy was shut down really, really well. They took Aidan O'Shea off him. Conroy was having some serious joy in O'Shea on the first half. They took O'Shea off him. They tagged him for the whole second half. He didn't get the same level of influence, because Paul Conroy is an absolutely brilliant footballer, and so is Shane Walsh. And in the second half, Mayo really, really tagged those 2 players, Shane. Really, 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 probably what you would say was really good defensive play, from a match-up perspective. And when you shut the opposition's key man down, the game then becomes a little bit easier for yourselves, and Mayo just got on top and stayed on top, and that was the difference for me.
If you were to try and make a case for Kildare winning this game against Dublin, and look, it's a tough one to do, but where can they get joy here? We know about Dublin missing players, and I think for the first time in a while that allows us to actually try and pick a few holes in Dublin, because the last number of years you're trying to create this scenario where Dublin could possibly lose in Leinster or an All-Ireland semi-final, and you're kind of fooling yourself, whereas now it kind of feels like some of those legends with eight All-Irelands at this point, they're coming they're probably slightly the wrong side of their peak at this stage, and some of the younger lads coming through, maybe they're not quite as good as the likes of Jack McCaffrey, who isn't there, and some of those other kind of players that you mentioned that they had coming off the bench in recent years. So, like, do you see any world where Kildare could shock them in this game?
It's a game of football. It's sport. It's, it can happen. I think, if you went back 2 or 3 years ago, people would have laughed you out the door if you'd have said Kildare had a chance or Meath had a chance. But I suppose what will happen now, Shane, is that Kildare will look at what Meath did in the second half last week, and Kildare will think to themselves, look, there's a chance here, And I think in previous years, Shane, I think the problem for a lot of Leinster teams was the psychological impact of Dublin, had on them, and how they probably, for the dominance that they had, it was very difficult for a team to even go in with any level of belief. But now Kildare are actually going to go in with a bit of belief. Jack O'Connor, I think, has been very bullish in his comments about, we're going in to give this a good go, and, we'll have a fair rattle at it. And look, if you look at it, Kildare won an All-Ireland title in 2018, Shane, under-21 title. That has got to give you a lift as a county. They've got a lot of players that have got a lot of experience under the belts. The likes of Ben McCormick, Kevin Feely, these guys, a lot of experience. Owen Doyle, some good leaders in there as well. And they've added in now the likes of Mark Dempsey at the back, Jimmy Hyland up front, who's the scoring machine. Aaron Masterson has now produced a midfield pairing with Feely. So they'll go in now with 3 or 4 of those under 21 players who have, and this is the thing about it, Shane, when those young players are coming through, they're used to winning. used to winning, you know, and they've come off the back of having won that title 2 or 3 years ago. Kildare this year got promoted to Division 1. That was a big lift for them, big boost for them. They beat Meath 1-14. The same Meath team who put 5 goals past them last year in Croke Park. Myself and yourself sort of reviewed that game, and we were looking at how absolutely naive they were defensively. They seem to have become a bit more steely defensively. So there is a case for them. There is a case for them, of course. But the question probably still remains is that have Dublin sort of timed their training? They caught the training ban. Obviously, being caught means that they're not going to do anything probably after that. That's what probably happened down as well. You know, they were caught. A lot of all counties obviously training away in pods, etc., etc. It gives you an advantage. Have Dublin now tapered or tailored their training to say, well, look, we'll get through Leinster, but we'll peak for the last week in August. So we don't know if Dublin have been training hard, if they've been pushing the players maybe, you know, a wee bit harder at this time of the year, nearly treating Leinster nearly like a National League, you know, thinking that they'll do enough. So that remains to be seen. You don't know, but I think deep down, Shane, when I look at those names, the Cluxtons, the McCaffreys, the Andrews, the Mannions, the Flynns, the McManamans, the Brogans, the Conleys, I don't think the squad is as deep and possesses as much quality, because those guys, and it's no disrespect the players that are there, because they're all brilliant footballers, they're brilliant athletes, brilliant footballers, but my God, Shane, like that's some list of name there and some list of quality there that they're missing, you know. And I think you touched on it a few weeks ago. I think you said something like 15 of the squad from Gavin is gone. You know, that's
from his last squad,
massive turnover players. And I just seen a couple of things in their game this year, particularly against Donegal in the semi-final of the National League. Just a couple of little things creeping in towards the tail end of the game where they just got what you would call sloppy for their standards. Everyone has always admired Dublin's ability to have their skill acquisition on such a high level. Like Dublin's skill acquisition, like their ability to make their hand passes crisp, their kick passing crisp, their handling up, like it's on a different level. It's class, and it's a great example to use to any young child who are watching them to look at the basic skills. Sometimes we can get bogged down in fancy systems and fancy kick out strategies and all this sort of, you know, extra stuff. But you go to the core basics, like their basics are absolutely outstanding. And the fact that they were turned over 9 or 10 times in the second half against Meath, they will be seething at that. And the leaders within that group, your Brian Fentons, your Kieran Kilkenny's, you know, your Conor Callaghan's now, who is a leader in that group, James McCaffrey, Cooper, those boys be setting the standards now this last 2 weeks saying this is not good enough. You know, so it'll be interesting to see. But the main man and the guy that sets standards higher than anyone else is still not there. And that is a big point.
Well, like you mentioned about the standards, and because of that, I'm just looking at, you know, I've 1 or 2 games where I've a few stats done from Dublin this year, and the Kerry Dublin game down in Thurles in the league. I think that was important for both sides. I don't think either side shows up there and thinks it doesn't matter whether we win or lose. And the first half of that game, where Dublin scored 3-6, they converted just 9 of 20 chances. To me, scoring efficiency is a huge thing with all teams at this level, and I think that's very low for them. In the second half, they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 chances, and they converted 4 of them. So to think you'd convert just 4 chances in a second half of a game, 4 of 8, like your scoring efficiency is very low. I'd say Dublin would be looking for 70%. So that's very low. Then I look at what happened against Meath. First half, I don't think that there's anything wrong with 13 out of 19. They scored 2-11. They were well on top. Second half, they scored just 5 points, and 3 of those were from the 73rd minute to the 76th minute. They put away just 5 of 11 chances during that. You can't ignore this sort of stuff. This is not very Dublin-like.
No, and it's probably, as I said to you, it's a glimmer of hope for the rest. You know, it's a glimmer of hope for Jason Pack, and you know, teams are not. I think in the current climate chain and being involved myself in the last number of years at the county level, like the level of statistical analysis and detail, like everyone's got everybody's stats. You know, you can't, like, there's no secrets anymore. You know, you're just calling out those stats there off a page there. You've obviously got your access to them. I can get access to them. So Kildare will look at that. Kildare will say, well, look, this is an opportunity here. And I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, whether it's just, you know, a lot of miles in the clock. Is it a concentration thing? Is it a focus thing? Is it, you know, people have said in jest that they're bored. You know, I don't think it's a boredom thing. I can't see that. Like, you could never get tired of winning, like, I'm sure. Like, but listen, you know, it's like anything, Shane. it's like anything in sport. It never lasts forever. It never lasts forever. And we said this a number of years ago when the great Kilkenny team. You're a hurling man. Obviously, you would be well versed to tell me the statistics. But what was it? Kilkenny won 9 or 10 out of 11. Was it?
I can't believe you'd bring that up and put me through that. But yeah, they won an awful lot. I mean, like Cody has 13 All-Irelands as a manager. So yeah.
But but it didn't last forever, Shane. It didn't last forever, and this is the thing. And Limerick are now there. They're the top dogs. They've won 2 or 3 in a row. They'll be going for another one this year. And that's not going to last forever, So, like, we've got to accept in sport, there's obviously a period of dominance. You look at Manchester United and soccer and the period of dominance that they had, that's not going to last forever, and we've proven that. So, it's like any sport, it doesn't last forever. And look, I had an interesting conversation a few weeks ago. Someone was telling me that, that they had played their under-20 team in a challenge game, and they were saying, like, even the quality of the under-20 footballer coming through just didn't seem to be at the same level as what they normally had, and that's a big thing. Like, it's a big thing. So it'll be interesting. It gives the pack hope, and I think for football's sake as well, it probably needs to happen.
Yeah, even seeing the Offaly under-20s win that Leinster title last week against Dublin, and keeping Dublin did they score 3-3, which is such an unusual scoreline to put up in a game like that in a final.
Yeah.
But comment in here from Emmett Oliver, that down jersey brings back memories. Me and Meath, man, 1991, down 114, Meath, down 116, Meath 114, down were outstanding and deserved. Sam, go to orgaretro.com if you want to get it and use the promo code OurGame for 15% off. So, Joe, actually, what do you think of when you see this down jersey?
Class, great memories. Got a ticket for the semi-final, but didn't get a ticket for the final, Yeah. But I remember the scenes in Newry coming home, and I remember my dad and mum taking me down. So I was only a pup. What was I, 11 years of age, was it? But those players were obviously immortal. They were heroes of mine, and there was some brilliant footballers in that team, Shane. And you look back, and funny, I had this conversation last week about this. The size of that down team. You had even the likes of Paul Higgins at cornerback, and Conor Deegan, Paddy O'Rourke, Ross Carr, Mason, all these guys. These guys were all big men, and the majority of them actually, Shane, played midfield for their clubs. The majority of those players, Pete had pulled a lot of players from clubs as well that maybe just weren't as fashionable back then. Obviously Peter Whitnell was pulled from Drummond S, and I just think now, even look at Kerry. There was a thing come up about Kerry, the amount of players that Kerry get from junior and intermediate clubs. In comparison to senior clubs, and it is it's something to be said. But we just don't at the current down team. We're not laughing about it. We're just saying we have no big men. And see, if you were to actually watch down club football, I've been involved in down club football now for 12 years, and there's probably not a division or a club in the league that I haven't seen over the last 12 years. And I would have a thorough knowledge of player knowledge of what's out there, and you couldn't pull out 4 big men. You couldn't pull out 4 midfielders. I don't know if it's in the genes or what the story is now. Or we need to get down women marrying people from Dublin or Kerry. I don't know what the story is, but it's mad. It's absolutely mad. But the jersey brings memories, and I'll give you a good laugh. Actually, I remember in '81, Mum and Dad taking me down to Newry, and I remember at the time my brother was 10 years older than me, so he was about 21 at the time, and just this car was coming past, and I remember my dad saying, "Look at that agent hanging out the sunroof with a down flag." And this car was coming down the Dublin Road, and this boy was in the sunroof waving a down flag. And as it got closer, I says to myself, "I think that's our fella." So when my dad said to me, he says, "I got to give him some skull today," he says. The team was phenomenal, and it was a great era, Shane, for Ulster football. It was a great era down in Donegal and Derry, and then down again. It was great times, great times.
Yeah, it was indeed. Yeah, of the teams left. If we just look at the teams left only, maybe looking back to last weekend as well, which players that are in the championship at the moment you really enjoy watching? I mean, Shane Walsh is now gone. I think everyone enjoys watching him. Couldn't believe that the ball bounced back 20 yards to him and he was well collected and put it into the net without a tackle against Mayo. But what players are you enjoying watching at the moment?
Listen, for me, Conor McManus is just sensational. Sensational. I was here a couple of weeks ago in the house watching it, and just watching it actually with the father-in-law, and we were just saying, it's just evergreen, how he keeps going at that level and keeps putting the body through it, and even the way he bought the frees at the end, I'm not saying bought them, but how he manipulated the situation to get a free was just pure experience, pure class. and you just think of what he's done, Shane, and the sustainability and the longevity of him has been phenomenal. He's just unbelievable. He's just an unbelievable footballer, and definitely someone to watch this weekend. Of course, in Tyrone, no doubt will have some sort of game plan or strategy, for him. But listen, there's Colin O'Callaghan, obviously, your standout performers, your obvious players, and obviously Clifford is special, but now that the brother is upstaging him this year, so there'll be a bit of banter in the house about that, I'm sure. But no, listen, Kerry are just blessed with so many good footballers, Shane. So look, for me, the weekend it could be decided. They're two very experienced teams. Tyrone and Monaghan are two very, very experienced teams. And if you look through both panels, you can see that there's a lot of miles in the clock, a lot of experience there. The last couple of occasions they met, Shane, it was a draw in the league this year, I think, in Omagh. I think it was a draw in Omagh.
Yeah, it was a draw.
Draw 14-all. I was at the last championship game that they played, actually, with the wife back in 2018. We were in Croker for that, and they beat Monaghan by a point. Rory Beggan had a chance at the end. He sort of took it to the outside of his foot. He could have maybe carried it in another 5 or 6 yards. But so there's very, very little between the teams. Very, very little between the teams. And if you actually look at both teams, Shane, Tyrone's game swung on a big moment. Michael Murphy penalty goes in. It's 10 points to 5. And Donegal 5 up, total control. Armagh played Monaghan. And on the eve of the game, Armagh lost what you could probably arguably say was their most consistent performer away from the likes of the O'Neills was Blaine Hughes. Blaine Hughes was having a fantastic season for Armagh in goals. And to lose a goalkeeper who is well versed in the kick-out strategies, gives the defence confidence. And the young lad who went in is going to have a bright future, and he's a brilliant young goalkeeper. But he was probably responsible for, a little bit of panic at times. And you sort of think to yourself, like, we could easily be talking about an Armagh Donegal final just as easily as we're talking about a Tyrone Monaghan final. So Sunday will be intriguing. Sunday will be interesting. Obviously I would like to see more of Conor McKenna, and I would love to see Cal McShane back to his best as well. Cal McShane in the first half against Kerry in I think it was 2019, I think it was. Tyrone were in total control, and McShane gave an exhibition of marked balls and scores, and he gave the Kerry full backline an awful day that day. So it'd be good to see McShane back, and it is good to see him back playing, because he's obviously had a couple of horrific injuries. Good people that looks forward to.
Because as you talk about those Ulster semi-finals, Monaghan 417, Armagh 221, like what a game, and then Tyrone 23 points, Donegal 114. It's my opinion that if either Michael Murphy was fit, and I think it was a lack of sharpness is the reason that, it definitely a contributing factor to him getting sent off in that game, completely changes it. And eventually, the likes of Conor McKenna comes on and they hit, the last 5 points in a row and end up pulling away by 6. That sort of stuff, like red cards, obviously, if you're against a good team who knows how to make it count, it counts massively. But two teams that on other days could have lost their semi-finals, like you said. So two teams that are also, they have their flaws also. And then a point that Conleth Gilligan made to me a couple of weeks ago is it is brilliant for both of these teams that it's on a Croke Park, because it's a dry run for a semi-final of the All-Ireland. And Kerry won't have played at Croke Park. Now, they're not unfamiliar with Croke Park, so maybe it doesn't matter to them. But it'll matter to these teams to get that outing at Croker.
Yeah, so I think Kieran McGarry was definitely delighted that it was a Croke Park. I think he gave an interview after the match, and I think he let him
explain. What a player he is, by the way.
But what's that?
What a player he is, by the way.
Listen. McGarry's a Rolls Royce. Kieran McGarry's a Rolls Royce of a footballer, Shane, and he's top class. He's absolutely top class. And that's the thing about Tyrone. You have the likes of McGarry, you have the likes of Sludden, you have the likes of Myler, the likes of Petey Hart, McKenna as well has proved it as well. Like, they've got some really good ball carriers, some really good. And I thought, Shane, in the semi-final against Donegal, when they went back to the running game, they were outstanding, absolutely outstanding. And yes, they want to kick the ball, of course, and it's great to kick the ball, but sometimes you have to play to your strengths. And I do feel that Tyrone's strengths are their running power and their athleticism, because I've always admired Tyrone players, even from underage level, their ball retention skills, their ability to keep possession of the ball and stuff. Very, very good and very strong. Schools football in Tyrone is healthy, it's strong. Their development squads are good structures. Good.
Can I ask you, but when you say that they play to their strengths, which is the running game, and that is a real positive, are they not as good at kicking the ball in as other teams?
Well, I suppose it's I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the level of skill that some of those players possess, but you watch some of them playing football, and you've always sort of probably associated Tyrone with that, sort of running game over the last decade. Now, if you go back to a decade before that, and you go back to the forward lines of Stevie O'Neill, Brian Dooher, Peter Canavan, Owen Mulligan, those players, Brian McGuigan, those players were all equipped and brilliant footballers, and were all able to mix their game. And I do feel Tyrone can mix their game, but I think, Shane, sometimes people can get wrapped up in a kicking game, which is like get the ball and drive it in long to a full forward. But a kicking game can equally be, if you watch Kerry on Sunday, little pop passes, 25 yards, 30 yards, popped into space, the one bounce pass, as you call it, And if you look at that, like, Tyrone are well fit to play like that. But I think because the psyche is that we want to nearly divide ourselves of any resemblance to Mickey's era, so we're just going to go with a direct game, get the ball, kick it in, and I thought at times it was just kicked in, Shane, particularly in their early league games, nearly aimlessly to McKenna at full forward, hoping for that 50-50 break or him to win a mark or whatever it happens to be. So sometimes a kicking game can get wrapped up in it has to be turn, get it and kick it in. But in fact, a kicking game can be equally good to watch when it's measured and controlled, and that's something that those Tyrone players are all fit to do. And I think it's like anything, if you can mix your game up and obviously, and not become maybe too one-dimensional. And I think that the teams that are left at the latter stages of the championship can all produce elements of really good kick and play and elements of really good run and play, every one of them.
Yeah, and how crucial is it to get Cathal McShane more game time here? Like, can they win this game against Monaghan without him? Can they win in All-Ireland without him starting there? And as well as Cathal McShane, where is the best place to play Conor McKenna?
Well, funny, I had this conversation last week. Like, Conor McKenna, for the athleticism and the conditioning, like, he's come back from a professional sport. He's in the shape of his life. He's a great athlete. But he's also a good footballer as well, of course. But he's got to be facing the play. He's got to be facing it, not chasing it, and that's something that I think they could obviously get a lot of joy out of this weekend. The fact that they've been playing him at 14, but Matty Donnelly operated there very well against Donegal. So now you have the option of McKenna. Now, from speaking to the father-in-law, who would be speaking to Tyrone personnel on the ground, as in supporters, not in the round at the heart of Tyrone and his own club and stuff, he would say that a lot of Tyrone people would love to see him at 8 or 9 in the middle of the field. So it's an area that Tyrone have obviously struggled in over the last few years. They've obviously unearthed Big Kilpatrick this year, who's a fine footballer, beast of a man as well. But you're probably looking at the likes of McKenna, who has got that athleticism, he's got that strength, he's got that, coming from that professional sport as well, to give a great big boost in around that middle third. So it's probably yet to be seen, Shane, where his best position is. But from speaking to the father, he would love to see him now in around the middle of the field.
A comment in from Benji Gallagher: Leinster, good signs, Offaly under 21s. Meath next week, I'm not sure if that's what he said. Beat Dublin in minor Leinster final. Meath fourth under 17 minor title in 5 years. Some of that I'm not fully sure exactly what's being said there, Benji. Apology, I can't fully get through all of that. But get your comments in. Let us know any other thoughts you might have. So this weekend now coming up, Tyrone Monaghan. We've talked about it this way and that. Croke Park. Which way are you leaning?
I'm going to lean towards Tyrone. I just think the bench, the quality they have on the bench, and I'm looking at Monaghan, Shane, and obviously, you're looking at the Monaghan full forward line: Conor McCarthy, Jack McCarron, and Conor McManus, an all-star full forward line, really, really good quality. But I'm looking at Tyrone. The last day, they had 9 or 10 different scorers. They weren't overly reliant on McCurry as much as they were the previous day against Cavan. So I'm just thinking that Tyrone have a better spread of scoring opportunities and scoring prowess. I think their bench is a little bit stronger. I'm just edging towards Tyrone. Edging towards Tyrone. But one thing about Monaghan, Shane, Monaghan are a proud county. Malachy O'Rourke obviously done phenomenal work in Monaghan during his time there. He installed the belief. He made the breakthrough at Ulster level. And for a county so small, what Monaghan are doing is absolutely phenomenal. To be in the minor final, to be in the under-20 final, to be in the senior final, it's an absolute credit to them as a county. And obviously on the back of the tragic news, of young Ogie losing his life in a car crash, like, that's there's a lot of energy in Monaghan this weekend. There'll be a lot of emotional energy as well in them, and the crowd will be behind them as well. And they're a proud county. They have a lot of dogs of war in there as well. I've said it before. Defensively, they've got some really good warriors in there as well. And I'm not ruling them out. But I just think Tyrone will edge it on the basis that they just have that little bit more maybe options coming off the bench.
Yeah, I'd say we both agree Dublin to come through in the Leinster final. But a question I would put to you at this stage: who's your favourite for the All-Ireland?
Well, it's funny because Kerry are now the favourites in the boogies, so
yeah.
I think it's the first time in 8 years, I think, is it? First time in 8 years or 9 years or something like that.
So there, I'm not sure.
Well, the last time I think Dublin have been favourites since 2013 or something like that, or 2014 or something like that. So maybe the first time in 6 or 7 years. But yeah, so it's an interesting one. But I think after Sunday, Shane, we'll know a bit more. And I think we'll sort of see where Dublin are. But as I say, no matter who comes through, it's two really, really mouth-watering semi-finals in prospect, and hopefully at that stage as well, a few neutrals will be able to get their hands on a few tickets, because it's difficult to get your hands on tickets for the games at the minute, with the limited numbers. And look, I think at this stage now we could maybe with the stadium the size of Croke Park, and you could maybe be looking at opening up for a few more, hopefully.
Yeah, and Benji's after sending in a clarification message there. I meant Meath next win v Dublin in minor final. It will be Meath's 6th win versus Dublin at underage in 5 years. So the signs are good there. Indeed, yeah, you just want a competitive championship. My prediction actually, Stephen, for the season is Mayo to win the All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin and then get beaten in the final. Same as it ever was.
I'm saying no.
It'd just be their luck.
From my side of the house here, obviously it'd be a happy house if Tyrone were to win the All-Ireland, but I might not be happy, but the other half of the house would be happy.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Stephen. Really appreciate it.
Shane, good man, you're a gentleman. Thank you. Enjoyed it.